My name is Ron Goches. I'm a teacher. I'm a high school teacher at LAUSD. And politically, the work that I do, that I've been doing is community organizer, working around issues like police brutality, immigrant rights, education, like lots of different things. Just anything that really affects working class people. You know, tensions between blacks and Latinos in South Central. Lots of different topics that we worked around, and of course right now we've decided as a collective community to take that next step and go for city council. So we decided to run for city council in the 9th district, which encompasses all of South Central LA, USC, and at the northern tip of it, it's LA Live.
Tell me about the 9th district. What are some of the issues that are facing people are facing there?
Well, the 9th district, it's the poorest district in the city by far. The average household income, not per person, but per household, in 90011, it's about $24,000 a year. So it's by far the poorest district in the city. We used to have downtown LA, so that was a major source of revenue for the district. But now that it was taken away by District 14, the major issue that we still continue having, now it's going to get worse, probably, unfortunately, is poverty. You know, it's the poorest. We have the highest amount of homelessness, and of the homeless people that we do have, unlike Skid Row and downtown, where there's not enough, but there's more missions and there's more housing. Here, 91% of the homeless people have no shelter at all. So there are people who literally sleep on sidewalks, you know, at a park or, you know, anything of that nature.
91%?
91%. Those are the last numbers that came out. And with the numbers, I know this past weekend, this past month, folks have been working on the homeless count in LA. We don't know what those numbers are going to be, but I would estimate that they're going to get worse, because just from living here and seeing every day, it's really tremendous. It's sad how many people live in just absolute, just destitute conditions. So, you know, that's one of them. And the other one being that District 9 is it's the district with the highest percentage of Latinos, which is kind of a shocker, because traditionally District 9 has been mainly African American, but in the last 15 years or so, things have really dramatically changed. So now the district is about 80% Latin American, the majority of those being from Mexico. And one of the bigger issues that we have is just racial profiling that's always existed, usually against the black community, you know, driving while black or anything like that. But now really it's LAPD turning on migrants and immigrants and making, you know, in LA over $20 million a year just from the car impounds of undocumented people. And of all the districts in LA, most of those car impound or checkpoints are held here in our district, because they know we have a huge chunk of people who are undocumented. So there's a lot of issues that we have, and that's, you know, we don't even have trash cans, the potholes, things that in other communities I think people don't even think about. They just take them for granted. But here in this community, we literally don't even have trash cans on street corners where the city comes and picks up the trash. So, you know, those are some of the problems that we have. Traditionally, what's happened is that the district, because it did have downtown LA, you had a total. You continue to have a total apartheid-like system where one sector of the area receives all of the resources, and the vast majority of the rest gets absolutely pretty much nothing. So traditionally, at least right now, Councilman Jan Perry, she's focused on cleaning up downtown, you know, LA Live. It looks really nice, it's great, and I love it. You know, I go there myself, but I understand that that's come at the expense of the great majority of the people of the district.
How so?
Because the resources have gone only to clean up that part of the district, which is really a small sector, a small, tiny part of the district, and not a whole lot of people live there. You know, the great majority, the density where people really live is south of the 10 freeway, where at least now 90% of the district is. So what I would do is I would reallocate resources to not just go and clean up downtown, but to clean up the streets of South Central LA, which really are the ones that have the highest amount of need. And when we're talking about, you know, again, the basics, whether it's potholes, whether it's putting in trash cans, whether it's painting over graffiti, yeah. You know, one of the proposals that we're going to have is to, you know, if elected, of lowering the budget of the LAPD. You know, in LA, more than half of every tax dollar from the people of LA goes directly to the police department. So I don't think that's a solution. You know, living in a police state, I don't think it's a solution. I don't think that that will solve the problems that we have in LA. I think that if we reduce the budget of the police department and use that money, you know, after school programs for youth, you know, in our parks and recs, things of that nature, even in the short term, I would say that we're gonna see that will pay off. You know, the benefits of that will be greater than simply having more cops, more guns, more repression in our community. And those are things that are feasible, that we can do, to simply reallocate funds to the poorer districts, the poorer parts of the district where people really need the support, not continuing to just keep LA live really pretty while everybody else suffers.
So tell me about the way that how did this process look like? You said the community came together and decided that the community as an organized entity should take it to the next level by nominating you to run for city council, right? So they chose you. So
Yeah.
what did that process look like?
So even 4 years ago, I was asked by different groups in the community, like the South Central Farmers, some church groups, some other organizations that said, hey, you know, we want you to run. And we said at that point, after studying the proposal, we said we didn't think it was the right time to do so. In retrospect, maybe we should have gone for it. Jan Perry ended up running unopposed. So, you know, we could have probably had a good chance at it back then. But this time around, the same groups and others came and said, you know, again, we're tired of all this stuff. You guys are the ones who are doing the most political work in the district. It only makes sense that you all go for this next step and really represent us, you know?
So tell me about the impact. I've been hearing a lot about neighborhood councils.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a neighborhood council? What is the impact that they could have at the community level?
So the neighborhood council, it's a system in LA where there's over 90 neighborhood councils. It's an official part of the city. The city provides some funds to each neighborhood council. Right now we're at about $40,000 per year. And it's an elected position. The community votes in that immediate community to see who are going to be their representatives on the neighborhood council. For the most part, throughout the city, we've seen that it's been like small business owners, mainly folks that have a little bit more resources that kind of have taken advantage of the program and use it to kind of benefit their own businesses, their own interest. But in South Central, what we did is that as part of the Southern California Immigration Coalition, which encompasses many different organizations in the area, we said, well, let's see what we can do in this process. So we put together a slate, and because we already organized in this community anyway, we have a lot of contacts. We very easily won the elections. We swept the entire election with all 9 positions, and with that money, it was $45,000 a year before. You know, we started doing all kinds of activities like Black and Brown Unity events. We started doing Know Your Rights events for workers in terms of like workers' rights. We did women's rights, you know, forums. We did stuff on immigrant rights. So really just to empower the community by giving them education about different things for undocumented students, things of that nature. So through that process, one of the major things that we were able to accomplish is that we wrote I guess you could say a resolution about the car impounds, the LAPD car impounds. And little did we know that at that time, we're talking about like 2-3 years ago, they had a policy in LA where if 3 different neighborhood councils passed the same resolution, it would automatically go up to the LA City Council. And we thought that was amazing because that really can mean that the community has some kind of power to force the politicians to, you know, take on real issues. So we immediately mobilized and we contacted our allies and other neighborhood councils. And I believe it was like 4 or 5 different neighborhood councils that passed the resolution on car impounds. Well, immediately when the city took notice that we were doing that, they said that this whole thing about the 3 neighborhood councils and the passing the same resolution, they said it was they said it was kind of like a test run program. It wasn't officially a policy, so they took it out, and then we were never able to get that topic to be discussed at city council. But what it did cause was a lot of controversy. We exposed the city for what they were doing. We teamed together with the National Lawyers Guild. They did a lot of research. We found out how much money, how many cars they were taking. It blew the lid on their corruption, and because of that, it went all the way up to the state. And now, so the state changed their policy on checkpoints, but now they don't take cars at checkpoints. So that's something that we started through the neighborhood council process in LA, really small level, and it actually changed state law. So it did have an impact.
So you were elected to serve as a member of the neighborhood council.
Right,
in
they're
District
elected
9.
positions in District 9. And
So this was a process of having to gain the trust of the community.
right, so we, like any other campaign, we went out, we talked to people, we passed out flyers. And on the day of the election, we went out and get out the vote.
Right.
And we very easily won the election over another slate that had the complete support of the police department. It was interesting. The police showed up in uniform with guns and went to go vote, really intimidating the community, we thought. But in any case, we already had organized our folks really well, and we easily swept the election. So it is an elected position. I'm currently the vice president of the South Central Neighborhood Council, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done, because even though we don't have a ton of money, we've been able to do a lot of community events that have really not only exposed a lot of corruption, but at the same time, things that our community really needs. And I think that that's something that's a real small level, but if elected into this position, I think that, the sky's the limit on how much we can do with the resources that a council member does have.
Wow. Tell me about the opposition then. What are you going up against? You're going up against big money.
I am going up against big money. Not so much downtown developer money, because that's not in the district anymore.
Right.
But what we see is that the people who are getting the big money are getting money from developers, they're getting money from bankers, they're getting money from Raytheon, they're getting money from corporations that do not have, the people of South Central LA, the working class people of South Central LA in mind. And where am I getting my money from? The great majority of the money that I am getting from my campaign, which I know is like, if I'm lucky, 10% of the budget of the establishment, the status quo candidates. That money comes from the community. That money comes from people I've gotten people who literally have given me a $3 donation, because that's all they could afford to give me. But I take that, and I'm honored that they'll give me the little that they have, because they believe in change. So I don't have a whole ton of corporations backing me up. The opponents are taking money from Walmart. They're taking money from companies that I wouldn't touch.
So who are your opponents then? Your major opponents.
There's 5 candidates that have a significant amount of money, but I think that in South Central LA, which historically has the lowest voter turnout because of this political disenfranchisement, just not engaged in the political process, it's not a district where you can come in with a ton of money and just buy an election outright. It's really difficult to do that, because you can send all the nice fancy flyers, mailers out. People are going to dump them, because they just think all politicians are the same, and I tend to agree with them. That's why I'm running, because I think that we need a viable alternative. So I think that when people at home, the average person is going to get 5 really fancy flyers from 5 different candidates, on top of all the different mayoral candidates that are going to be sending flyers as well. I think a lot of that fancy money is going to kind of just neutralize itself, I think. And what's really going to work is the real connection that people have with myself. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the connection is so real and unique to me, is that out of the 7 candidates, I'm the only candidate that's actually from this district. All the rest literally have just moved in here just to run. We have someone moving in from like the Whittier area, someone moving from Covina, people who have no connection to South Central LA, but are going to try to quote unquote represent us. I think it's a slap in the face to the people of South LA, because that's saying, we don't think you guys are capable or have the capacity to represent yourself, to bring about the necessary change on your own. We have to come and rescue you. When they hear that I am the only candidate from this area, whether they're black, whether they're Latino, their reaction is the same. They say, what? Are you kidding me? These people are not from here and they want to represent us. So, that's a reality of where we live, and I think that that's why I have a shot. They have the big money, but I have the connections to the community, because I've been living here for years, and I've been a teacher here for 8 years, and the people know that, they know the political work that we've done. They know that we've never gotten paid a cent to do it. It's just because we believe in community change. And they know that I'm going to continue to do this, whether I win or lose the election. That's going to continue. This is home. I'm the only one that can say this is home, and it's going to be home. And we joke around here, it's on March 5th, there's going to be an exodus of people leaving South Central. The ones who don't win, who don't make it to the runoff, they're not going to stay and live in South Central anymore. They're going to be gone. They're going to go right back home wherever they came from, But me and the community, we're going to stay here and we're going to keep fighting.
Wow. Tell me, what first got you involved in politics?
Oh man.
We're going back in the past.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's in my blood, man. I'm Salvadoran and Mexican, so from my Salvadoran side, my mom's side, ever since I was a little boy, I grew up right at the same time as the Civil War in El Salvador. And when I was 9, I remember going for the first time to El Salvador with my mom. They were still in the middle of the Civil War, the revolution, and all these contradictions became very apparent to me at such a young age. You know, just playing soccer in the streets with little boys who couldn't afford shoes, had no food, just like extreme poverty, like extreme poverty, right? And me coming from LA, obviously I wasn't rich. I came from South LA. You know, we weren't rich, but at least we had shoes, at least we had food, even if it wasn't the high quality stuff, but we didn't go hungry.
Because you were born here.
I was born here.
Yeah. But then you went to El Salvador, and there were some things that you saw was absolute poverty.
Yeah, and those kind of things, contradictions, you know, raise questions in the mind of a little boy. And ever since then, you know, I always had those questions in mind. And one of my uncles, who is still alive, he lives here, his son was one of the many thousands of kids in El Salvador who were kidnapped to become child soldiers. He knew who was funding the war. He knew who was really responsible for that war, and that was the U.S. government. And he had a huge grudge against the U.S. government for financing that war against the people of El Salvador. And he, as a young boy, he would always tell me like all these things about the government. And I was like, well, but my teacher at school says that we're the good guys, and we play, you know, we pledge allegiance to the flag. And my uncle was just kind of contradicting everything that I was hearing in school. So it was kind of like this clash of ideas in my head, you know. And as I grew up as a teenager, I guess the contradictions became more stark because I was raised in South LA. I still live in South LA, but my mother, she was and continues to be a housekeeper in Santa Monica. And every morning, starting in late middle school, we started going to school in Santa Monica. And I went to high school in Santa Monica. So I live in the hood, but I go to school in Santa Monica, right? So, you know, my reality was that I was taking the bus to school, and the kid sitting next to me at 15 had brand new BMWs, you know? So these contradictions continue to raise more and more questions.
Literally?
Yeah, oh yeah.
BMWs?
Oh yeah, they had
15?
better. Oh yeah, it was crazy. We had kids who had way better cars than the teachers, you know, like the kids had cars like the principal or better, you know, and it was just, and then there was the rest of us who were from the hood who just had bus passes if we were lucky. These kind of things raised all kinds of contradictions about the system that we live in, the society we live in.
Your personal experiences kind of made you a lot more conscientious as a child.
It did. And then when I went to college, I went to San Diego State, which is, you know, a 10, 15-minute drive from the border. I mean, from my dorm room, I can physically see Tijuana. I can see the lights at nighttime. So, you know, as an 18-year-old kid going to San Diego State, of course, we went to party in Tijuana. And there is when you see, like, the extreme contradictions again. You know, you come from San Diego, which a lot of it's pretty wealthy, and you cross the border to Tijuana where you see, you know, real just desperate poverty again. It continues to raise issues for me. I was blown away the first couple of times because I would try to talk to the kids in the street. You know, sure, I gave them, you know, $1 or whatever because they were asking for money or food or whatnot. But then I would try to speak to them, and to my surprise, none of them spoke any Spanish, you know. And I'm like, what? I'm in Mexico. They don't speak Spanish? At the time, I didn't realize, you know, that there was all kinds of different indigenous people that now live in Tijuana as a result of their migration, and they couldn't get across the border. So you have communities from all over Mexico and Central America who have been kind of just stuck. That really got me involved. And when I saw the harassment and the treatment of our communities in San Diego by the Border Patrol, you know, that really kind of, as a college activist, is where I got started. And from then on, you know, since I was 18 years old, until now, it's, you know, it's the point of no return where I'm politically involved, and there's nothing else that there's no way I can not try to do something to help out our community because I know the realities, and it's something that I'm going to continue to do forever.
Tell me some more about your experience about going to El Salvador. You said you went when you were 9?
Yeah, so I went in 1990.
And what'd you see?
Extreme poverty, you know, playing soccer with kids. I remember going home with one of the little kids to his home, and being a chubby little kid back in those days, after playing soccer for a couple hours, I was hungry, you know. And I remember being in this kid's, I call it a home, it was really more like a shack, right? Saying, hey, you know, do you guys have food? And he said, well, no, we don't have any food, but sometimes when my mom comes home, sometimes she brings food. And I was like, sometimes? What do you mean? You know, I was 9. I didn't really understand these things. And I realized that, of course, they were in desperate poverty. They didn't even eat every day. And this kid, he was barefoot, no socks, nothing. It just really struck something in me. And then I do remember, he's like, all right, I have to go home now. And I was probably the same age as this kid, but like a lot bigger than him, you know, because, you know, different nutrition and everything. I remember giving him my shoes, which are probably like 2-3 sizes bigger than his, at least. But he was like the happiest kid in the world with my old beat up shoes on, you know. And I remember walking back to where my mom was, barefoot, and she was like, where are your shoes? And then I was like, well, you know, this other kid, he didn't have any shoes, so I gave them to him. My mom was like, what? But then I told her the story, and then, you know, what was she gonna say? But that's the kind of poverty that I saw. And then when I realized later on in life, and when I had a better understanding of why there was a civil war, who was financing the civil war, and that led to almost 100,000 deaths in El Salvador, you know, that really is where my anti-imperialist politics comes from, and that is the effect of U.S. imperialism all over the world and the direct impact that it's had. And you know, that's why there's almost 2 million Salvadorans in the United States today, at least because of the forced migration, because of a civil war. And of course, when I look at Guatemala and all the other countries, and obviously now Iraq and, you know, Afghanistan, you're going to do the same thing.
Tell me about your mom's experience in El Salvador. She had to leave El Salvador?
Yeah, she left. Her favorite cousin, I guess one of my uncles, he joined the guerrilla. He joined the FMLN. She considered joining the guerrilla as well, not for political or ideological reasons. It's just simply because her favorite cousin joined the guerrilla, you know?
The rebels against the government?
Exactly, yeah, the rebels against the government. My mom ended up moving to the United States to not, you know, be one of the many victims of the war. She obviously had me here. She had a crazy experience, and I guess I was part of it. She went back to El Salvador as an undocumented woman, all on her own. She was 7 or 8 months pregnant with me, and she goes back to pick up my great-grandmother, her grandmother. And so now you have 2 women on their own migrating from El Salvador to Los Angeles, one of them 8 months pregnant, in the middle of a civil war. So I almost was born in El Salvador. I guess, you know, fate had it that I wasn't born there. My mom was able to make it all the way across here with my great-grandma. But those are the conditions that they lived in. You know, she told me she saw, you know, decapitated heads and stuff like that on the streets. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that made her leave, like many, many Salvadorans, you know. So that's where I come from. It's in my blood. And being that I've had family members who died in that war, struggling and fighting for the rights of Salvadorans to become free from the government that they had at that time, I know that it's in me to keep up the struggle, whether I'm here or over there, you know.
So your mom was undocumented, returning to El Salvador. Was she undocumented here? Is she, or was she undocumented?
She's documented now,
okay.
But when she went back to pick up my great-grandma, she was still undocumented. So it was quite the risk that she took. But they made it back. So it was my undocumented mom and my undocumented great-grandmother and me in the womb, and they made it back, and I was born in LA a couple months later.
I was reading something about you've organized in support of having multicultural education.
Santee High School is the school where I used to work at. It's also in District 9, it's LAUSD. We felt that it was extremely important that we had ethnic studies classes. We saw the necessity of it because we had a lot of racial tension at that campus. We had so-called race riots, which then turned into police riots, where the police came onto our campus and started beating up everybody.
Onto the school?
Yeah, yeah.
And you feel that bringing multicultural education would be a good way to diffuse the racial tensions?
Absolutely. So, for example, at Santee, we had these racial tensions. You know, we implemented Latin American studies, we implemented African American studies, and we had, of course, you know, Black and Latino. The school was 100% Black and Latino. When we had students learning about the cultures, learning about the history, the common struggles, it was amazing. I mean, we didn't think it was rocket science. We knew that what was going to happen. And when kids became proud of their culture, became, you know, knowledgeable about their communities and the history, of course, the tensions went down. The campus completely calmed down. I mean, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a utopia, but we didn't have any more racial fights. We had, a couple knucklehead kids, who would cause some problems, but all in all, it was a tremendous shift. People were getting along. We had many events. We had, not only did we have the classes, we also had like Black and Brown Unity assemblies at the school. We brought in speakers from the community, and it was really, really positive. So the tensions definitely went down. The school calmed down. I think in the immediate community, things got a lot better. Unfortunately, at the end, the reason why I had to leave that school was because of our challenges of the mayor, and especially on the car impounds. We knew the mayor is the one responsible for all of that. So it really was political repression. So they went after me. They got rid of me at that school. That's how I ended up at this school now, Maya Angelou. But now that I'm here, right now I'm teaching Latin American Studies and African American Studies. So I implemented the same thing here that we had at Santee. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because the school here didn't have either one of those classes. And I think that it's really something that it should be implemented systematically throughout LAUSD, because I think that would highly affect the graduation rates, the push-out rates, like we see in Tucson, Arizona, where we're seeing the benefits of having ethnic studies courses.
Now, we're doing the interview here at the school that you teach at Maya Angelou High School.
Yeah, and this semester, I'm actually lucky enough, I teach African American Studies, which it's a trip, because the kids are learning African American Studies from me, Mexican Salvadoran. But hey, man, whatever it takes, and we're having a lot of fun right now. The kids are doing projects. They're doing research projects on different characters from history. So I mean, looking at my board, from Malcolm X to Marcus Garvey to Harriet Tubman. They're not going to learn a whole lot about these folks in U.S. history classes or world history classes. They're barely just kind of referenced on maybe one page. But this whole semester is dedicated to, the black history and the contributions of African Americans in this country. And kids love it. Both Black and Latino kids, they love it. They're learning things they've never heard of. And it's fun. The same kids who last semester took Latin American Studies are the same kids who are now learning African American Studies. So I think when they get some knowledge of both cultures, it really is hard for me to see that them going at it on racial terms. It's a huge deal to be able to stop those kind of tensions, because that really can save lives. And we've seen in the community we have a lot of problems with tensions, but if we can affect at least the kids here, I hope that goes a long way out in the streets as well. They came at me. It was Fox News. They ambushed me. They came to my house at 6 in the morning one day before work, and I just walked outside, and it was Fox News, a camera crew there, and I was like, what the hell's going on? I gave them the interview, and they tried to corner me, and they asked me if I was a socialist, and I said, yes, I'm a socialist, and I'm proud to be a socialist, And I think that's what they fear, is that I'm not the type that is going to backtrack on what I say. I'm not the type that's going to say, well, actually, no, I'm not really. I'm actually, no, I say what I mean, and I mean what I say, and I cannot be butt off. And I've already, I'm not even going to take their money. If elected, I've already said that a city councilman makes $178,000 a year in LA, which is to me absurd. I already said I will not take a penny more than my teacher salary. I don't think I deserve anything more. I think that's plenty fine for what I'm going to be doing, and I challenge everybody else to do the same. During the Bush administration, it was common that they had like those massive raids where they would go to factories and just get hundreds of people, raid hundreds of people at a time. So we started something like it was a rapid response network. So we had a hotline where people can call us if anything like that was happening, and it was quite successful. People in the community, through the media, we got the number out there, and we would get calls from all over the place. We did many Know Your Rights trainings, so that people would know what to do in case the immigration officers came to their place of work or their homes or whatnot. We did dozens of things of those types of workshops, and really to just let the community know what to do. And we heard of many stories, and I'm sure there were many more that we will never hear, of people who actually didn't get deported because of what they learned at these workshops. So that's the work that we've done. Also organizing and pressuring at a statewide level, at a federal level. And we had our part in those massive mega marches that we had here in Los Angeles. We organized the contingents from South Central. And I think the success there was that at least in 2006-07, HR 4437, we believe would have passed if not for the massive street uprising all over the country. So, we've seen that mobilizations do work, And that's why we still mobilize every May 1st. And now in Los Angeles, the Southern California Immigration Coalition, even though we're not the one with the most funding, we're not the one that has the Democratic Party funds, we organize the biggest march in LA now. And that's because I think the people really relate to our demands. We're not just asking for some small reform for some people. We're demanding legalization for all people. And I think that message is clear, and it's extremely important right now because of what's happening in Obama's announcement that they're pushing for immigration reform. We're concerned with what kind of immigration reform they're talking about, because when we study the proposals that have come out in the last 3 years, they really would make things worse than they already are. They're mainly punitive. They would punish more people than the people who actually would become legalized. So we can't accept any kind of so-called immigration reform that would actually hurt the majority of the people so that a few can become legalized. That's something we cannot negotiate. We can't negotiate the livelihoods of our community. We know that there's other organizations that are more than happy to do so, to stand next to the politicians in front of TV cameras and pat them on the back, but we're not going to do that because we think that the dignity of our community is much more important than just hanging out at press conferences with politicians.
Also, you've taken on issues of living wage policies in Los Angeles.
Yeah, on the day before Thanksgiving, the SEIU USWW, which is the janitors union, the famous janitors in their purple shirts, they called me and they asked me if I would be willing to go out to a protest with them the day before Thanksgiving. They were going to do a civil disobedience at the LAX because they're not, the workers there weren't treated with respect. They weren't getting health benefits. They were being threatened with all kinds of different things to their living salary. And so they asked me if I would get arrested with them. I said, of course, I'll do it. So, anything that to defend working class people, I think that's my obligation to do so. And as a teacher, I really feel a responsibility because I teach the kids all this stuff about social justice. I teach kids about police brutality and all these inequalities. And then any kid on any given day can say, well, mister, you know all this stuff, what are you doing about it? And if all I can say is, well, I'm teaching you about it, I'm not okay with that answer. I think that we have to be active participants in trying to make the change. So my kids know, whether they see me out in the streets themselves or whether they see us on TV, a lot of times when we're doing different activities, they know that we really are standing up. And I think that that's a lesson, not in the classroom, but it's a lesson plan for the streets. And I think that's equally as important because the kids see that, anybody can be someone, an activist, a teacher, anybody can stand up and fight for the community. And I hope I'm setting an example that one day they'll I don't want to say one day because a lot of them have already joined us. They're out there in the streets with us, But I hope that one day, whenever they become whatever profession they choose to go into, that they know that they're also can have their part in the movement.